When I called my mom to ask about the Hawaii trip, I was smiling before she even answered. I'd spent months saving for that vacation, our fresh start as a family. Her voice came through, calm and distant. "Oh, honey, we already went last week. It was a family trip." The words hit harder than silence. My phone slipped from my hand. In my head, one thought repeated like a heartbeat: I paid for it, and I wasn't even invited. After my divorce, I decided to rebuild quietly. I found a modest apartment in Buffalo, kept my head down at work, and told myself that independence would be enough. But peace never lasted long, because my phone never stopped buzzing. Every call came from home, and every call carried the same message: help. My mother, Diane, had perfected the art of making guilt sound like love. "You've always been our rock, sweetheart," she'd say whenever I hesitated to pay another bill. My father, Martin, would add his favorite line: "Family doesn't keep tabs." It became their anthem, repeated every time they needed something. A little for rent, a bit for the car, a quick loan for Ryan, my younger brother, the family's golden boy. Ryan was charming and aimless, always between jobs, always on the verge of success. Mom called him our pride. I was the reliable one, the problem solver, the invisible backbone. When Ryan couldn't pay his rent, I wired it. When Mom's insurance lapsed, I renewed it. When Dad's car broke down, I paid the mechanic. They said thank you in the same tone people use when you pass the salt: automatic, empty, expected. I thought giving was the same as loving. I told myself this was temporary, that I was helping them recover from hard times. But months turned into years, and the help never stopped. Every transaction erased me a little more. Then came the idea of Hawaii. I'd saved $30,000 over 2 years, money meant for myself. But when I saw how strained our family had become, I convinced myself that a grand gesture could fix everything. A week in paradise, all expenses paid, a fresh start. A family trip, I called it. When I told them, Mom cried. Dad hugged me. Ryan called me the best sister ever. For the first time in years, I felt useful in a way that didn't hurt. I planned everything: flights, hotel, tours, each detail perfect. I imagined us laughing under palm trees, reconnecting. I thought generosity could buy belonging. But a week before the trip, things shifted. Mom started saying I looked too tired to travel. Dad murmured something about how crowded airports can make anxiety worse. Ryan didn't answer my texts at all. The silence grew until it became impossible to ignore. On the morning I believed they were packing, I called to confirm the flight time. No answer. I called again that night. Voicemail. 3 days later, Mom finally picked up, her tone light, casual, content. "Oh, honey, we already went last week," she said. It was a family trip. For a second, I couldn't speak. "You went without me?" She sighed, as if I were being dramatic. "You've been through so much, Nora. We thought you needed rest. Besides, it was better this way, less tension." Less tension. That was the phrase she used to justify erasing me. When the call ended, I opened my laptop. Their photos filled the screen: smiling faces on beaches, dinners under lanterns, captions full of warmth. Ryan had written, "Sometimes, family is all you need." Family. The word stung more than any insult could. I scrolled through the comments, the likes, the hearts, every one of them applauding their bond. The same bond one had paid for. The flight confirmations and receipts were still in my inbox, my name on every booking, my card on every transaction. I'd built their paradise and watched them live in it without me. For hours, I sat in silence, the glow of the screen turning their smiles into ghosts. At first, I wanted to call and scream. Then I realized there was nothing left to explain. They hadn't forgotten me, they'd deliberately cut me out. That night, I opened my bank app. The numbers told a story clearer than any words could: months of transfers, utilities, repairs, tuition. Every time I thought I was helping, I was just buying my place in a family that never intended to keep me. My mother's phrase, "family doesn't keep tabs," echoed in my mind, but now it sounded like mockery. I finally saw what it meant: we take, and you stay quiet. I whispered into the empty room, they went without me. It was a family trip. The words didn't break me, they freed me. Because that was the night I stopped mistaking obligation for love. I wasn't part of their family anymore. I was their funding. And from that moment, I decided I'd stop paying for the privilege of being forgotten. I went to my parents' house 3 days after that call. I didn't warn them. I needed to see their faces, to understand how they could erase me so casually. Their car was still dusty from the trip. Through the window, I saw them laughing, Mom unpacking souvenirs, Dad scrolling through his tablet, Ryan showing off pictures on his phone. My $30,000 vacation looked like the best week of their lives. When I knocked, Mom opened the door just a few inches. Her smile faltered. "Nora. What a surprise. We were just getting settled." "From Hawaii?" I said, stepping inside. I figured I should congratulate the family who took a trip without the person who paid for it. Dad looked up, startled but not ashamed. "We were going to tell you. You needed rest after everything." "Rest," I repeated. "That's the reason you left me behind?" Mom sighed. "Sweetheart, you've been tense lately. We didn't want drama." The way she said drama made my stomach turn. I realized they hadn't forgotten me, they had planned to keep the trip peaceful by keeping me out of it. Ryan walked in wearing a Hawaiian shirt. "Hey, you saw the photos, right? It was amazing. Thanks again for the gift." I stared at him. "A gift? I wasn't giving you a gift. I booked it for all of us." He shrugged. "You never said you were coming." "I paid for 4 tickets, Ryan." "Yeah," he said lightly, "but you always do stuff like that." Dad stood, his tone already defensive. "Let's not turn this into an argument. You've always helped us. That's what family does." "No," I said quietly. "That's what I do. You take." Mom folded her arms. "You offered that money, Nora. Don't throw it in our faces now." "I offered it because I believed I was part of this family," I said. "Not because I wanted to sponsor one." Her eyes narrowed. "You've changed since the divorce. You used to be so kind." "I used to be useful," I corrected. "There's a difference." Ryan laughed under his breath. "You're seriously mad about this?" "It's not a big deal." "It is to me," I said. "Because I've spent years paying for everything you call love. I bought your safety, your comfort, your happiness. And this trip, this was supposed to be my way back into the family." Dad's voice sharpened. "Don't be petty. We never asked you to do those things." "Exactly," I said. "You didn't have to ask. You expected it." Mom stepped forward. "We're your parents. We raised you." I met her eyes. "And somewhere along the way, you convinced me that loving you meant paying your bills." The room went still. Ryan's smile faded. "I'm done," I said finally. "I'm cutting every payment. The mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, everything stops today." Dad's face darkened. "You wouldn't do that to your family." I already did everything for my family, I said. Now I'm doing something for myself. Mom's voice rose. You're being ungrateful after everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done? I asked. Other than spend what I earned? Ryan muttered, You're so dramatic. I turned to him. That word again. You all call it drama when I stop letting you use me. Maybe what you mean is control. I picked up my bag. You taught me that love means debt, I said, my voice steady. I'm done paying. Mom took a step forward. Don't walk out on your family, Nora. I paused at the door. I'm not walking out, I said. I'm walking away. Outside, the air felt lighter than it had in years. I stood on the porch, listening to the muffled sounds of their voices behind the door, angry, defensive, already rewriting what had just happened. For once, I didn't rush to fix it. I walked to my car and sat there, hands on the wheel, breathing slowly. For so long, I'd believed silence kept the peace. But peace built on guilt isn't peace, it's servitude. As I started the engine, I looked back one last time at the house I'd spent half my life maintaining. It looked smaller now, like the illusion it had always been. That was the moment I understood, they hadn't just taken my money. They'd taken my boundaries. And I had just taken them back. I called Uncle James the same night I left my parents' house. He'd always been the one person in the family who saw things for what they were. A retired lawyer with a dry sense of humor, he once told me, Your father never learned where generosity ends. At the time, I laughed. Now, it didn't sound funny anymore. He picked up on the first ring. Nora? What happened? I think I finally understand what you meant, I said. I need help. An hour later, I was at his kitchen table surrounded by old legal pads and a pot of coffee that smelled like burnt honesty. I told him everything, from the monthly bills to the Hawaii trip. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he leaned back, rubbing his jaw. They built a system, he said. And you've been financing it. He had me pull up my online banking. Together we scrolled through years of transactions, mortgage payments, utilities, tuition transfers, insurance renewals. He started counting aloud. When he hit 100, he stopped, eyebrows raised. 120 separate payments, he said. All in 2 years. That's not kindness, Nora. That's payroll. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I thought I was helping. He shook his head. Helping is temporary. This was designed. He guided me through the next steps like a teacher with a nervous student. First, shut off every automatic payment. Then change your passwords. Every single one. Next, gather evidence, receipts, screenshots, text messages asking for money. Don't delete anything. I did exactly what he said. That night, I canceled the auto payments that had quietly drained my account for years. Each click felt like cutting a chain I hadn't known I was wearing. The next morning, Uncle James opened a fresh folder labeled Financial Exploitation, Ellis Case. You're not going to court yet, he said. But you're going to protect yourself like you are. A few days later, we visited Mrs. Patel, my parents' next-door neighbor. She was in her 70s, gentle but sharp. When I explained what was happening, she sighed. I always wondered about that, she said, shuffling through a drawer. She pulled out a worn receipt from 2 years earlier, the roofing company's invoice. You paid for this, didn't you? Your mother told me to sign for the repair while she was out. I nodded. She handed me the slip. Keep it. I don't like lies, Nora. You did a good thing. They just never said thank you. When we got back to Uncle James's house, I laid the papers out on the table. Payment records. Text threads. The receipt from Mrs. Patel. A digital map of 2 years of manipulation. I stared at it all and felt something new. Anger, yes, but steadier, cleaner. Uncle James poured coffee and said, "You're doing the right thing. Don't let them twist this into guilt." I looked at the stack of proof, at my own name repeated in every transfer, and whispered, I wasn't being kind. I was being used. He nodded. Now you know the difference. That's the first step toward freedom. That night, I started a journal titled Evidence and Boundaries. I logged every transaction, every message, every memory that proved the pattern. For the first time, my life made sense on paper. Every withdrawal told a story of someone who confused love with obligation. And for the first time, I knew the story wouldn't end the same way. 2 weeks after I shut off the payments, a thick envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a court summons. My parents and Ryan had filed for temporary conservatorship, claiming I was mentally unstable after the divorce and incapable of managing finances. I sat at the kitchen table, reading the words again and again. I should have felt shocked, but mostly, I felt tired. I called Uncle James. He sighed. Martin's finally gone too far. This isn't about protecting you, it's about regaining control. He helped me contact an attorney, Melissa Grant, a sharp and composed woman who'd worked with him years ago. When she read the petition, she gave a small, incredulous laugh. They're claiming the person who paid their bills for 2 years can't manage her own? She looked up. We'll end this quickly. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. When I entered the courtroom, they were already seated. Mom wore black and clutched tissues, Dad looked stern, and Ryan stared down at his phone, pretending to be nervous. They looked more like actors than family. The judge, an older woman with silver hair, opened the file and said, "We're here to determine whether Ms. Ellis requires a conservator to manage her affairs." Their lawyer stood first. Your Honor, the family only wants to ensure Nora's well-being. Since her divorce, she's shown erratic behavior, emotional withdrawal, cutting financial ties, and refusing family contact. They fear she may harm herself financially. He spoke with polished pity, painting me as unstable. I watched my parents nod in rehearsed sadness. Then Melissa stood. Your Honor, what they describe as instability is actually independence. And we can prove it. Uncle James rolled a cart forward. On it were 3 labeled binders, payments, evidence, and media. Melissa opened the first binder. For 2 years, Ms. Ellis covered the petitioner's expenses, rent, mortgage, utilities, car insurance, tuition, home repairs, totaling $138,000. Here are the records and bank statements to verify every transaction. The judge examined a few pages. And all these payments were made by the respondent? Yes, Melissa said. With her own income, without reimbursement. The opposing lawyer shifted. Family doesn't invoice family. Melissa smiled slightly. Agreed. But they also don't file for guardianship when their income source ends. She opened the second binder. Here we have text messages from the petitioners requesting money, often within hours of her payday. We also have witness statements confirming Ms. Ellis paid for major home repairs out of her own pocket. The third binder was marked media. Melissa pressed play on a short video clip pulled from Ryan's social media. In it, he laughed, drink in hand. Honestly, I don't stress about bills. Nora's basically our bank. Laughter filled the background. The courtroom went silent. Ryan shifted in his seat. Melissa closed the binder. That's what this case is about, dependency disguised as concern. The judge turned toward my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Ellis, when your daughter was hospitalized after her collapse, did you visit her? Mom blinked, unprepared. We thought she needed rest. So you didn't visit? Dad hesitated. We planned to, but... The judge raised a hand. That will be all. Silence filled the room. Melissa spoke again. My client has maintained full-time employment for over a decade. Her only mistake was mistaking obligation for love. The judge closed the file. Petition denied. There is no evidence of incapacity. Additionally, I'm issuing a protective order preventing any financial or reputational interference. You will not contact Ms. Ellis regarding her assets again. The gavel struck once, final and sharp. Mom gasped. Ryan stared at the table. Dad muttered, unbelievable. I stood and said calmly, you turned my love into income. The account is now closed. Outside, reporters waited. Within hours, the story spread. Ryan tried to post a tearful video, claiming I was twisting the truth, but someone uploaded the court documents, and that clip of him calling me their bank. The internet did the rest. Comments flooded in, she paid for your lives and you called her unstable? For once, I didn't have to explain. The truth spoke for itself. That evening, Uncle James poured me tea and handed me a copy of the judge's ruling. It's over, he said. I smiled. No, I replied. It's just beginning. Because for the first time in years, my money, my voice, and my peace finally belonged to me. A month after the court hearing, I packed up my apartment and moved west. Seattle felt like a blank page, gray skies, salt air, and enough rain to wash everything clean. Uncle James helped me unload the last box, then hugged me tight before driving back home. For the first time in years, I stood alone in a space that was entirely mine. The apartment was small but quiet, with wide windows and soft morning light. I didn't buy much furniture, just the basics and a small wooden desk by the window. On my first morning there, I made coffee slowly, listening to it drip instead of checking emails or payment reminders. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. I started a notebook titled Things I Don't Owe Anymore. Every page was a reminder, I don't owe anyone my savings. I don't owe apologies for choosing peace. I don't owe love to people who mistake it for obligation. Some mornings I only wrote one sentence, but each word felt like reclaiming ground that had been taken from me. My days became simple. I worked, I read, I practiced yoga in the living room with the windows open. When it rained, I let it. When the phone buzzed with messages from old contacts, I didn't answer right away. I didn't owe that either. One Saturday, I went to a small gardening shop and bought a basil plant. The clerk handed me a packet of seeds and said, start with one. Just see if it grows. I brought it home, filled a clay pot with soil, and pressed the seeds into the earth with my fingertips. For once, I whispered, I'm growing something that doesn't drain me. Days passed softly after that. The basil sprouted, green and alive under the window. Some mornings, I'd catch my reflection in the glass, same face, different woman. When sunlight poured through the window, I smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because for the first time, it didn't have to be. I was enough. And I was finally free. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: kindness without limits becomes exploitation. Love doesn't mean surrender, and silence isn't peace. You can care deeply and still protect yourself. You can say no and still be good. For years, I believed that giving endlessly would make me worthy of love, but all it did was teach people how to take without guilt. If you've ever been the one holding everyone together while they let you fall apart, tell your story. Someone out there needs to hear it. You're not cold for setting boundaries. You're courageous for choosing peace. And if you believe that justice doesn't always have to shout to be heard, that sometimes it looks like walking away and reclaiming your own life, stay with me. Subscribe for more stories about quiet justice, family truth, and emotional freedom.